Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. So this is our March Benefit Specialist video conference, and we have some really great things on the agenda for you this morning. We have a guest presenter with us, Kathy Ernst, who is with the Department of Health, and she will be talking about the Medicare savings programs and a little bit of tip information for applying for Medicaid. We also will be talking about some revised notices with Andy Barker and Georgia Aug, some exciting work registration updates, and then we're going to go over work registration policy and ABAWD policy. So, as always, if you have any questions during this broadcast, please send them to me via instant message or email. We'll put together a Q&A afterwards, and I will send that out to the entire field for you. Also, if you are on time analysis, those time analysis codes are on your agenda. So go ahead and use those as you're entering those into the FMS system. Let's see. This is recorded. If you need to be pulled away from this at any point, you can pause it, jump right back in where you left off so that you're not missing anything. Supervisors, if you have anyone out, please make sure that they do go back and watch the recording of this at a later date. I think that's it. Keep up on the Wombat trainings. Those are coming out. We just had a new one come out yesterday, so make sure that we're getting those done on time. And if you haven't done your driver safety that was emailed out last week, please make sure to get that done as well. I think we'll go ahead and get started. So I'm going to turn this over to Kathy Ernst, and she's going to talk to us a little bit about those Medicare savings programs. Welcome, Kathy. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. So I thought I'd talk about the Medicare savings programs first. This is for clients who are Medicare eligible. Medicare savings programs are special programs for individuals who are receiving or entitled to Medicare and have limited income and resources. The goal is to provide assistance with the cost of Medicare premiums, and for those who qualify, also with cost sharing, paying the copays and deductibles. There's 3 different Medicare savings programs, and it's based on income. There's qualified Medicare beneficiary, which that's the one that pays for the Part A and B premiums, coinsurance, and deductibles. There's specified low-income beneficiary, referred to as SLMB, and this pays for Medicare Part A and B premiums. And qualified individual, it's basically the same as SLMB, it's just out of a different pot of money. It also just pays for the Part B premium. Part A, if they require it, most of them already have that covered. Eligibility requirements, they have to be entitled to Medicare A and B. They have to be a Wyoming resident. And I'm not sharing, am I? I just realized. Sorry about that. Okay, so you can see my screen? Okay, so they have to be a U.S. citizen or qualified immigrant. The income guidelines for this, for QMB, it's only 100% of FPL. For SLMB, 120%, and for QI, 135%. The resource guidelines are $7,730 for an individual, and for a couple, it's $11,600. Resources are cash or other liquid assets or real property that a person owns that can be converted to cash, such as checking and savings accounts, properties such as land, retirement or pension plans. And some resources are not counted in the limit, such as one home can be excluded if the equity value is less than $585,000, and it's the individual's primary place of residence. And vehicles are also exempt for MSP. QMB benefits begin on the first day of the month following eligibility. So if they apply in May, they're not going to be eligible till June. SLMB and QI benefits begin on the first day of the application month when determined eligible. Retroactive benefits are not available for QMB, and they may receive retroactive benefits during any of the 3 months prior to application for SLMB and QI. And eligibility is determined separately for each retroactive month, so they have to provide verification for each of the retro months. Part B buy-in can take 60 to 90 days from the time the MSP approval before the Part B premiums are no longer taken out of the applicant's Social Security check. So it does take a while to buy in, but once we buy them in for the approved months, they're going to get reimbursed. Renewals have to be completed every 12 months to determine continued eligibility, and a case can close if they do not complete the renewal, if they move out of state, if they enter a public institution, excluding Uinta Hall, if they pass away or determine no longer eligible. Clients must be screened for other Medicaid programs before their case can be closed. They must receive a 15-day closure notice unless they pass away, if they move out of state, or if they request closure themselves. And there are reporting requirements. Following changes must be reported within 10 calendar days, and that's income, resources, residency, or if they obtain insurance. So this is a good program for those clients that really don't have another coverage group. At least we can help them with that Part B premium. Wyoming, unfortunately, doesn't have a lot of coverage groups for adults, so I really like this program for that reason. At least we can help them out usually in some ways once they're Medicare eligible. And we do have a fact sheet regarding this that can be sent to clients, or if anybody in the field, the DFS field office, wants a copy of this, we can certainly provide those. This gives the monthly income and resource limits. These are changed in January and April. So we don't change the income limit for MSP until April. So the resources do change if there's a cost of living, though. Well, actually, the resources change every year. And so that's put into place on January 1st, but the incomes change on April 1st. So this is just a fact sheet that can be useful to provide to clients on how to apply and what the guidelines are for Medicare savings. So there's also a lot of confusion on where clients need to apply since all of Medicaid is now worked in a central location in Cheyenne between our long-term care unit and our customer service center. So I put this fact sheet together just to kind of help people and guide them as to what should be done when they're applying. So do I send the application to the customer service center or the long-term care unit? So all applications go through the customer service center except for inpatient hospital, nursing home, waiver, and hospice. And those are all done in our office, in the long-term care office. And I've provided the customer service center address, which is in Cheyenne on Del Range. It's 2232 Del Range Boulevard, Suite 300. I've provided their fax number, their email address, and their phone number. Our long-term care unit is in a different building on Yellowstone Road, and I've provided that information along with our fax number and our toll-free number. So certain programs for the long-term care programs and for EID do require a disability determination. So I've specified which programs actually require a client to be disabled for eligibility. And that's inpatient hospital, nursing home, community choices waiver, and the EID program. And if they do need to complete a disability determination, that's done in our office. And we require a Medicaid disability application plus 12 months of medical records. They can be either faxed to our office, they can be emailed to me directly. And the financial application also has to be completed. If they're applying for EID, that needs to go to our customer service center. So that's just kind of an informational sheet on what to send where and some contact information. So, and that's really all I have.
There we go. All right. Well, thank you, Kathy. We appreciate you sharing that information with us. For our workers, I did send those fact sheets and that PowerPoint to you for your reference. If you have questions about any of that, let me know, and I will get those questions to Kathy. We will get those answered for you as well. With the QMB and the SLMB programs, that affects us as we're processing our SNAP applications, because we're looking at that those programs are covering the Part B payments, so that's not coming out of the client's Social Security checks any longer and would not then qualify as an expense deduction. So that's how that all ties into the SNAP program for you. If you have questions about that process as well, let me know and we'll get those answered and out to you. So thank you, Kathy. We appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you. You're welcome.
All right. So with that, we're going to turn it over to Georgia Auk, and she's going to talk to us about some changes in our TANF notices.
Good morning, everyone. Happy to be here this morning and share with you some of the exciting things we've been working on with our notices. First of all, I want to say thank you for your patience. This is a big project, so it's going to take a little bit of time. We're trying to hit those most frequently used notices first, and then we'll roll back and get some of the other notices. I think we shared with you before the goal of the notice project is to make sure that we have notices that are much easier to understand for our customers. We're trying to achieve about an 8th grade reading level, and we're trying to eliminate a lot of that government language. So same message, but just using a different tone. So a couple of important notes about the notices, the power notices that we're going to cover in just a couple of seconds. I think you've probably already seen this language change. We are no longer using or trying to phase out the verbiage of performance period, and we're replacing that now with pay period. It's so much easier for the clients to understand, and it really supports the power pay after performance model. So we really like the pay period language better. We're also trying very hard not to use the word fail, as in fail to comply or fail to provide. It has such a negative connotation. And so we're trying to replace that with verbiage like did not provide, did not submit, did not attend. Again, less punitive language to really encourage more participation and engagement in the Power Work program. And then lastly, I want to share with you some really exciting news. Because we are not including CFR and state statutes on the notices anymore, for Power, that means we are able to combine several notices. So the first one we're going to talk about today is the A201, and we've been able to combine a lot of the notices that you had previously into one. And we think that'll be easier for you guys, and also, again, the language is a whole lot easier to understand for the customers. Unfortunately, and I promised Andy I would give you this disclaimer, we can do that for Power, but we cannot do that for SNAP. So please be kind to Andy. It's not her fault. There's just more notice requirements in the SNAP world. So let's get started. Let me see if I can present. So bear with me. Okay, so the first notice is the A201 denial notice, and you can see that we have rolled several notices into this one. So we no longer have the A202 failed to complete the application process, or the 209, not living in an adult supervised setting, which is specific to minor parents. A211, lack of step-parent income. 213 is really the format and the body of this notice. Parent moved in or out of the home, and the A225 sponsored alien. So you can see we've rolled them all up into this one. And again, most of the language is still the same. Here's the system generated date that the application was received on, but here's where the big change is. Your application has been denied for the following reasons. And I've included some examples for you. You need to be very specific here. This is the reason why the application is being denied. So for example, Susie did not attend the DWS appointment on 2/15, or Mary did not follow through with child support requirements. Susie did not submit the required birth certificate. So as you can see, we're not using the failed to submit or failed to provide information. But there should be ample room here for you to use common language regarding why the application was denied. So be very specific here, use very common language, and I think you'll like this one a whole lot better. Also, I think you'll notice here in this content, this is the new information regarding pay period. Again, we're not using the performance period language. We've replaced that with pay period. This is going to be on all power notices, just to reinforce that this is a pay after performance model, and that the pay period is the 15th of one month through the 14th of the following month. Very common, easy to understand language. So that's the combo notice for the denials. Really hope you'll like that one. The next one is the A710 performance requirements. This is the non-compliance notice. Just some smaller changes here. Again, you'll still input dates for the months and then the pay periods here. But instead of saying they failed to comply, we listed it as program requirements that were not met by you or your family. Again, plenty of room here for you to be very specific about what was not completed, what program requirements were not met, and again, some examples that you can see. So again, be very specific, using common language, but easy to understand language. Here's really where the big difference is on this notice, the what you need to do. So this falls in line with the SNAP notices as far as the content. In this case, when there is a performance requirement that was not met by a family member, what they need to do is contact, and you can see you can insert a very specific name and number here for more information as soon as possible to learn how you can receive a payment for the next period. So here, what we really want you to do is insert the appropriate worker name and provide the phone number that pertains to the non-compliance. We really hope that this will help you eliminate a lot of unnecessary phone calls and help you facilitate the customer contacting the agency that the non-compliance is associated with. So hopefully that'll help reduce those number of phone calls for you. And again, note, here's that language again regarding the pay period. Again, just reinforcing that they have to follow through for a full pay period in order to get paid. Okay, so that one's pretty simple. And the last one I wanted to review with you is the Earned Income Incentive, or the A711 notice. This one, I have to tell you, was really fun to create. This one is all about the Earned Income Incentive for those individuals who qualify based on new employment. So we really changed the tone of this notice to make it more congratulatory, if you will. And it shares information about the incentive months, which is the 1 to 6 months of power. And as you can see, I've included a little note for you guys that also includes the location in the combined manual where you can find that information on the incentive months. Typically, it's 1 month at a full payment or 6 months at half payments, but either choice requires that the participant continues to engage with DWS. So again, you will input the months that the incentive periods will be and the amount of the payments. Again, the client must stay in compliance and they must continue to report changes within 10 days. So again, here's that language about the pay period that will be on all power notices moving forward. And that one's just pretty simple and straightforward. So really hope that you guys like those notices. Hope that you find them easier to use. We're looking at the closure notices as well and hope to be able to combine a few of those just because we're removing all the statutes. So we're able to combine them and make them a little more generic, but it requires you to be a little more specific in your explanation. So just keep that in mind. Keep that in mind as well when you're talking with your power participants and your customers. Maybe incorporate some of that new language to help with their understandings during the application process and during the referral process. And if you guys have any questions or comments or feedback on any of those notices, please feel free to send them to me. Be happy to engage in some conversation with you as well on those. And then just a couple of quick reminders. Please make sure that your customers are signing page 3, the child support assignment section on the DFS 100 application. We found in a couple of our monitoring activities that that's been missed a few times. Incredibly important to the overall child support requirements. So please make sure that's signed. And then just to follow up on Valerie's hit the mark a couple of weeks ago, I want to make sure that you're all using the DFS 563 communication process. It's incredibly important to use the 563 either using the Word version or the canned response. But please make sure you share info when it's received with your appropriate partners. We know that Power has a lot of moving parts, a lot of partners that we work with and that our customers work with. So share information when you receive it, act on it when you receive it, and please don't be overly punitive if you received the information, but it wasn't reported directly to you. And lastly, don't forget, those need to be sent via email so that the email server can provide a date and time stamp on those communications as well. Okay, thanks everyone.
Thank you, Georgia. All right. I would like to give a quick clarification for the driver safety, the defensive driving training. Not everyone received it. So if you did get an email, make sure that you do get that done. It might not be time for everyone to have it. Along with that email, I would like to say, change that there. Oh, there we go. Okay. That it looks kind of like it's a fishy email. We've been doing all the Wombat trainings on computer safety and internet safety. And so it looks like it might be something that you don't want to mess with. I can't remember exactly what the email address was that it came from, but the subject line said assignment, tasks assigned to you on it. So if you did receive that email, I'll be honest, I immediately deleted it thinking it might not be something that I should touch. And then I went back and went, oh no, driver safety, that was coming through, pulled it out of my trash file and did it. So if you got it, get it done. If you didn't, it's just not time for you to do it yet. All right. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Andy, and she's going to talk about some of the notice updates for our SNAP program.
Thanks, Val. And thanks, Georgia, for adding my little disclaimer. I really appreciate that. When we work on the notices, we really try to, something we're really trying to do is format as best we can consistency between SNAP and TANF, or SNAP and Power. But we kind of find that it's not always working the way that we want it to, but it's still working really well, and it's a labor of love, as I said, for the 4 of us to be doing that. So that being said, if you guys remember a few weeks ago, I sent out 2 new notices to you, and those were a closure and a change for a client who is not completing work registration requirements. So The notices I'm about to show you today, this is kind of why we split the work registration and then the sanction notice, because really truly the sanction notice was not fitting for work registration, because it's not, we don't necessarily sanction them. They're just really not eligible until they complete the work registration. And so it's kind of two completely different things that we were fitting into one notice. So I'm going to share my screen to show you our first one. So this is our closure. And this is going to be your new sanction. So this notice was really complicated. It had a lot of information in it that we ultimately decided really wasn't pertinent to the client understanding. You know, we had like a lot of information about what your first and second and third occurrences, all that kind of stuff, which we're not required to tell the household that. So we ultimately said, like, let's get it out of there, because that's really not, I mean, it's important, and it's important that you verbally explain that to them, but it's not the most important thing about this notice. And so I did kind of just piggyback on what Georgia did and just gave you a good example. So real simple, your SNAP benefits will end effective the first day of whatever month you're working on. You're going to enter the household member's name. And in here is going to be totally free form for you to put whatever it is. I mean, the voluntary quit is probably the most common that we see, so that's why I use that as the example. And then you can also put in the length of disqual period. Under the what you need to do is where, again, you'll have a chance to free form what they'll need to do. The only thing I'm really requesting of you guys is to really be conscious of what you're asking them to do. As far as the language that you're using. We don't want to overcomplicate it, and especially in a situation like a sanction, it's really easy for us to do that. So if you can really kind of write out what you're going to say, and then really ask yourself if that's an understandable way to say it. If it's not, you know, you can brainstorm with your coworkers. You can ask me, Marianne, Georgia, Bree. We're all kind of really cognizant of how to change the language to simplify things in these. And so if you just really need help, let us know. Again, I gave you just this example because I think it's probably the most common that we see. So we have the what you need to do section format that we've been talking about changing all the notices to, and then also the deadline. So this just really kind of simply explains, hey, if you secure this other employment before your sanction is applied, there'll be no sanction. If you've decided that, or not if you've decided, but if you're truly exempt from the work requirement now for whatever reason, if they left our office and, you know, got in a car accident and broke their leg, something like that, you know, let us know before that sanction is applied. And if they feel like they have good cause, even though we've, you know, initially determined there was no good cause, they need to let us know. So again, it's just simplified. We don't have the explanation of the first occurrence, second occurrence, third occurrence. We just ultimately decided that wasn't the most important information that they needed on this notice. So the next one is your change. It's really similar, works the same way. The difference between the changes that you're not closing the case, you're just reducing the benefit. And I should stress on both notices, just like I requested on the work registration notices, one notice per person. We don't want to fold, you know, if we've got more than one person in the household who has non-complied, we want one notice per person. It's just more easily understood, I think, by the clients instead of trying to wrap it all into one. But again, this just kind of works the same. You're gonna put the household, the member that didn't comply, you know, what they did. I've used the same example. All this information down here is pretty much the same as your closure notice. So I will send these out to you guys. So you can use them as a reference if you'd like. And I'm not sure if I heard Georgia say or not, we don't have these notices active in Epics yet. We wanted to wait to get this training completed before we rolled them out. So we will be letting Bree know that we've done the training, we're ready to go. And so Georgia and I will be notifying you when we know for sure that Bree's got them in Epics and they're ready to use. So that is it for SNAP notices. I have no idea what you're looking at now. Are you looking at me or Valerie? I don't know, but They're looking at me, okay, because I see you and I don't know if I'm still screen sharing, so I got a little confused. Okay, so the other couple quick things I want to talk to you guys about. Back in December, we had a review with FNS, and what FNS was reviewing was our ABAWD process, work registration process, and ENT process. So we did have some findings come out of that review, unfortunately. A couple things that we've been doing incorrectly that we've literally been doing at least since I've been here, but I had no idea it was incorrect. So these are a couple things that are going to change that Valerie has added into her trainings that she'll be doing with you as soon as I'm done talking. And then there are also things I will get in policy by the end of the day. Again, I didn't want to put that in there with no explanation. So the first one is that when we have clients who are in climb or the dad's making a difference, they are essentially, they are receiving funds from employment and training. And typically we have exempted those clients from work registration based on, we consider their enrollment in the program that they are bona fide students. And so we exempt them from work registration, and that is incorrect. So it's not incorrect that they're not students. We do consider them that. However, FNS has clarified for me that because they are receiving ENT funds, we want them work registered. So we're going to require that now. I don't think it's going to be a huge issue as far as like the dad's making a difference, because they receive a lot of funding also from WIOA, and so the work registration process is already happening for them. So for us, it will just be getting verification that they are work registered. For climb, it's going to be a little tougher. What I'd like you to do really from here on out is that you require anyone who's in climb to work register at their certification. I'm not asking you to go into their files now and go figure that out and get them work registered. So the next time they certify, if they're still enrolled in climb, we're going to get them work registered. But I'm also going to work with climb on seeing if we can make that just a part of their enrollment process when they are enrolling them in the program, providing them with our form so that they can already get that done, and then the client's already got it done and can turn it in when they're applying or they're recertifying. So more to come on that. The second, which I think is probably the ones I'm going to hear the most groans about, so I'm not really all that sad that I can't hear you guys this morning, and that is when we required somebody to work register and we don't get that verification, and we've pended our 10 days for it and we don't get it. We cannot act on that without trying to make contact with the client to establish good cause. So this is something that's not in our policy. It's something I had absolutely no idea that we had to be doing. So to make it as simple for you guys as possible, we don't have to make contact if we can't, but we have to try, basically. So what I'm going to have you guys do, and again, I'm going to add it into policy, is if you've pended somebody for work registration and you have not received it, I just want you to pick up the phone, make a phone call. Hopefully you can get in contact with the client to see what's going on. If not, leave a message and narrate that you've made that contact. QC is going to have to see that you have attempted that contact. And then when this finding came in, I just really didn't understand it. I felt like we've already established they don't have good cause for not registering, so it was kind of confusing to me. But the example FNS basically used was, let's say you interviewed somebody today. You said, okay, you have to work register, and they leave our office and they're walking across the street and a car hits them and they end up in the hospital. And then therefore, they have some work restrictions or things like that, because that stuff can happen. So that was their example. That's why we have to do that extra step to try to make that contact to make sure that nothing has changed in those circumstances. So try to make the contact. If not, like I said, leave a message. If you can talk to them, great. Narrate whatever happens. So if you talk to them, narrate it. If you left a message, narrate it. If nobody answered, just narrate it, and then you can take whatever action you need to take. And I will turn it back over to Val. Like I said, both of those changes for us will be included in her training today as well.
Absolutely. Thank you, Andy. All right, so I'm going to flip the trainings on the agenda around this morning. Looking at the agenda, I decided that it would be best to talk about work registration first, to go over those exemptions from work registration, because when we talk about ABAWD, we will say if they're exempted from work registration, then they're exempted from ABAWD. So I want to go through and kind of flip that around. So if you have printed your PowerPoints and you have them ready to go, take a moment and switch those out. We're doing work registration first. So let me get that up and shared. There we go. All right, so work registration requirements. So the first thing we need to know about work registration is our DFS 301 work registration form. That form must be completed at the time of application and every 12 months after initial registration by all work registration mandatory individuals. So when we talk about doing your pre-interview preparations, and checking for verifications that maybe are due to be renewed at that point in time, this is one that you want to take a look at. If the 301 work registration form that you have in the file is from within the last 12 months for a particular individual, then we're good to go and we do not need to update that. But if it is 12 months or older, then we know that we need to get that renewed at the time of application unless they meet an exemption, which we're going to be talking about. So this does exclude mandatory persons who are excused while meeting work requirements by participating in the unemployment benefits or the regular POWER program. That's the DWS referral mandatory POWER program. That does not include a child-only case. Or if they are also participating in a regular tribal TANF program, same thing. Adults are mandatory, they're meeting work requirements through that tribal TANF program. So let's talk about some exemptions from work registration because I think that's the easiest way to look at this. Who is exempted from work registration? Any child who is under the age of 16, including a child who turns 16 during that certification period. Any child who is age 16 or 17, but they are not the head of the assistance unit, or they are attending school, or they're enrolled in an employment training program at least half-time. The majority of your 16 and 17-year-olds will be attending school. If they're not, then we know that we may need to have them work register. Also, if they are aged 60 or older, they are exempted from work registration. We have also some exemptions that can be met through physically or mentally unfit individuals. They're unfit for employment. That does need to be verified by receiving either temporary or permanent disability benefits issued by a government or private source. A determination of incapacity can be completed with the DFS 110 Statement of Incapacity form, which has been completed by the individual's licensed physician, psychologist, or master level mental health worker. You as the worker can also make a visual determination of a physical disability. It must be clearly documented in the narrative. If you have someone who does manual labor for a living and they were in a car accident, they're currently in a wheelchair, broken legs, something like that, you can physically see that they are unable to work at this time. You can make that determination, narrate it, talk about, what their prognosis is, how long they're expected to be out of work for, and put all of that in your narrative as well. That way, the next time they come in, you're able to look at that, you have some background information, and you can follow up on where their progress is. Physically or mentally unfit for employment can be verified by cooperating with the Department of Employment, or DVR, in the application process for services, cooperating with the Social Security Administration in the Supplemental Security Income application process. It does have to be the Supplemental Security Income application, so SSI. Keep in mind as well that if that SSI application has previously been denied and is now in the appeals process, that no longer exempts the individual from work registration. It has to be the initial application process for SSI. It does not apply to SSDS, SSD, SSDI, only that Supplemental Security Income program. So that is going to require you to make contact with the Social Security Administration to verify what the application is and that it has not previously been denied, it is not in the appeals process, and make sure you transfer all of that knowledge and that contact into your narrative. It can also be, their disability can be verified by receiving VA disability compensation. That is regardless of their disability rating. It does not matter if they are 10% disabled or 100% disabled. If they are receiving disability compensation from the VA, then they are exempt from work registration. All right, a parent or other individual who is responsible for the care of a dependent child under the age of 6, a parent or other individual who is responsible for the care of an incapacitated person. That can be, it can also be an adult. I had a gentleman who was required to care for his incapacitated mother. She needed around-the-clock care, so he was unable to work. Because of that, we were able to get that verified through her physician and exempt him from that. That situation also requires a very, very good narrative. So let's make sure we're practicing getting all of that information from our brains onto the paper so that the next person who's looking at that, or even you 6 months down the road, because we don't remember anything, can get a really good picture of what's going on. All right, also a person who is receiving unemployment compensation, we mentioned that. It also applies to an individual who has applied for unemployment benefits. They've not yet received payments, but they are complying with the work requirements that are part of the federal state unemployment compensation application process. So they just haven't received a payment yet. All right. A regular participant in a drug addiction or alcohol treatment and rehabilitation program. Now for this, regular participation consists of required recurring counseling that occurs during work hours from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. and or therapy that has been court-ordered or is part of a probation agreement and cannot be accomplished outside of work hours. Now, this is a new clarification that we do have in policy as well. The individual must be participating a significant amount of time during work hours that would prohibit them from seeking or gaining employment and or the facility from providing the services that verify seeking and gaining employment is detrimental to their recovery at this time. So if they were to start working, that might be detrimental to their recovery. It does exclude participation in Alcoholics Anonymous. The AA program does not exempt an individual from work registration. Now, this is a situation that I get a lot of questions on, and I believe that Andy, Kelly, Jackie, and supervisors see a lot of questions on too. This is not a black and white area, and I know that's sometimes frustrating for us as workers. This is something that is looked at on a case-by-case basis. We need to see what the program is that they're participating in. We need to see what their requirements are. We need to know if it does prohibit them from seeking employment or if seeking employment would at that time be detrimental to their recovery. So this is not something that we have that black or white answer for you. It does require a little bit more contact with the facility, with the individual, a little bit of research before we can make a decision on that. Which also means that once that decision is made, it's going to require a lot of documentation in the narrative for you. So, all right. All right, also exempted from work registration is a bona fide student enrolled at least half-time in any of the following during normal periods of class attendance, vacation and recess, be a recognized high school, a training program such as Wyoming Technical Institute, Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, and certain employment and training programs which include education and are not receiving ENT funds. Now that's what Andy was talking about. So if we have individuals participating in employment and training such as Dad's Making a Difference or Climb Wyoming, if they are receiving ENT funds, they must complete that DFS 301 work registration form, unless they're meeting that through POWER. So if they're participating in POWER, part of their POWER work program was getting them into Climb Wyoming or Dad's Making a Difference or an ENT program, then they're meeting that through POWER. But if they're not receiving POWER, they're receiving ENT funds, they do have to work register. That is something new. All right, new for us anyway. Institution, also if they're participating in an institution of higher education, such as Laramie County Community College or the University of Wyoming. All right. Also exempted, individuals subject to the requirements of the POWER or Tribal TANF program. It does not include those participating in relative caretaker POWER or Tribal TANF. Those are the child-only cases. Only the cases where the adults are mandatory to participate in the work program. Those individuals are exempted from work registration because they are meeting that requirement. That's part of the POWER program requirement, is that they have to work register within 14 days. They have to participate in the work program. So they're already meeting it through that. All right. Individuals who are employed or self-employed and working a minimum of 30 hours weekly or receiving weekly earnings equal to at least the federal minimum wage multiplied by 30 hours. So an example of that would be an individual who is earning $10 an hour. They're working 25 hours a week for a total earned income of $250 per week. So when we take that $250 per week and divide it by the federal minimum wage of $7.25, that gives us the equivalent of 34.48 hours that individual would be working if they were receiving minimum wage. That individual is therefore exempted from work registration since they're earning at least the equivalent of 30 hours per week at federal minimum wage. So that's one step further that we do need to go when we're looking at potential exemption based on working and the hours that they work. All right. Also exempted are individuals who are employed or self-employed and working a minimum of 30 hours weekly or receiving weekly earnings equal to at least the federal minimum wage multiplied by 30. And they're a migrant seasonal farm worker who was under contract or similar agreement with an employer or crew chief to begin employment within 30 days. All right, so a reminder, work registration compliance requirements on the DFS 301 shall be reviewed with anyone who is temporarily excused from signing the form so that he or she is aware of the requirements and penalties of noncompliance. So if you have someone who is temporarily exempted, you want to still let them know what their future requirements may be should that exemption end. All right, so let's go over the mandatory work registrants. Now that we know the exemptions, we know who is mandatory. Now what do we need to do with them? They need to register either online or at Department of Workforce Services. They need to complete an online resume at wyomingatwork.com, respond to a request for supplemental information regarding their employment status or availability for work, report to an employer to whom referred if the potential employment meets the definition of suitable employment, not voluntarily and without good cause, quit a job of 30 or more hours per week or reduce work effort to less than 30 hours per week. For more information regarding good cause, please look at Combined Manual Section 706. They can also need to accept a bona fide offer of suitable employment if the wage is at least federal minimum wage. For a definition of suitable employment, look at Combined Manual 704. And they must also retain and maintain that suitable employment. All right, if they are found to be in non-compliance, we will deny any mandatory individual who refuses to sign the DFS 301 and or sanction anyone who fails to comply with the work requirements for unemployment benefits, POWER, or tribal TANF. A mandatory individual shall be disqualified for failure to comply with the work registration requirements without good cause. Now, remember the update that Andy was just talking with us about. The benefit specialist must attempt to make contact with someone who has failed to complete the DFS 301 work registration form to determine if there is good cause for not complying. This attempt must be clearly documented in the case narrative. Now, that is attempt. You are not required to continue your attempt until contact has been made. If the DFS 301 is not returned to you, please pick up the phone, make a phone call to contact that client. If they answer, find out if some extenuating circumstance that meets the good cause requirements prevented them from work registering. If it did, great, narrate that, you know where you're going with it. If not, then we know that they failed to comply. Now we can narrate that and deny that application. If they do not answer the phone and you leave a message, that meets your requirement for attempting to make that contact. You just make sure that you need to put that in the narrative. So you do narrate, called such and such number to reach so-and-so to determine if good cause for not complying with work registration requirements is there. They did not answer, left a message, whatever happened. And then you can go ahead and deny that application at that point because you've met that attempt requirement. All right, so an individual is assumed to have complied unless information is received from DWS that he or she has not complied. So once we have verification that they have met the work registration requirement, they've completed that DFS 301 and all the requirements that are on there, we're going to assume that they're continuing to comply for the next 12 months unless you receive something from DWS saying that they're not. All right. Also, remember that if one person in an assistance unit of 2 or more individuals does not comply with the work registration requirement, that individual should be sanctioned and the remainder of the assistance unit is potentially eligible for SNAP benefits. We're not going to deny the entire assistance unit benefits because one individual failed to comply with work registration requirements. That's an individual requirement. I do hear my instant message going off, so I will get those questions answered for you. But for right now, we're going to keep moving forward. Okay, so non-compliance with work registration. We've got some examples here of that. Our example 1, household applies for, it's a household of 1. They apply for SNAP benefits and they are required to complete work registration requirements. The individual refuses to comply or does not provide verification of compliance. What do? The benefit specialist must attempt to make contact to determine if good cause exists. If contact cannot be made or good cause does not exist, then the application should be denied. All right, example 2, household of 3 applies for SNAP benefits. The household consists of 1 adult and 2 children over the age of 12. The adult in the household is not employed and does not meet any other exemption and is required to complete the work registration requirements. The individual refuses to comply or does not provide verification of compliance and does not have good cause for not complying. The adult should be sanctioned. We do that by coding them DF on SEPA, and a sanction date should be added to WORW and EPICS. Benefits will be issued for the remaining 2 members of the household. So we're not denying that whole application. We're sanctioning the adult that did not comply. All right, WORW and EPICS. How does this all translate into our EPICS system? So we have the WORW screen. This is our Tom Selleck. We have the, let me get my little handy pointer here. We have our exempt heading, which is over these 4 columns. That is asking, is this individual exempt from work registration? So is Tom S. exempt from work registration? The codes that we can put into that indicator field are Y for yes, meaning they are exempt from work registration, or N, meaning no, they're not. So Tom is not. He does need to work register, so we're putting that N in there. And then the verification, hard copy, client statement. And then once he brings that DFS 301 work registration form back, showing that he has registered with them and met the requirements on the form, we're going to put that date that it was returned to us here. All right. Tom B is also not exempt, and then the date that that was returned to us as well. All right, so that is work registration. I'm going to stop sharing screen here for just a minute so I can get the ABAWD stuff up. Exit out of here. Let's see. Okay, lots of great questions coming in. It's going to be a great Q&A sheet that we send back to you. So just a little patience and we'll get all of those answered for you, and I'll have that sent out to you this afternoon for sure. that going and share ABAWD. Okay, all right, so we're up and running. So now we're gonna move into ABAWDs because work registration and ABAWD work so well together. It just makes perfect sense. All right, so who is an ABAWD? An able-bodied adult without dependents. An ABAWD is a SNAP applicant or recipient who is able-bodied. They are an adult between the ages of 18 and 50, and they live in an assistance unit without dependent children. Why do we identify ABAWDs? Federal regulations limit SNAP benefits received by ABAWDs to 3 months and a 36-month period if they're mandatory, so they're not meeting an exemption and they're not meeting work requirements. They can also receive 3 consecutive extended months if they're mandatory, if they did meet the work requirements, but now they're no longer meeting those. Or an ABAWD may receive unlimited months of SNAP benefits if they're meeting the work requirements for ABAWDs. So our 36-month calendar here in Wyoming is a set 36-month calendar. That means it starts for everyone on the same day and ends on the same day and then starts over again. So the 3 months of ABAWD benefits a client can receive started as of October 1st, 2018 and will end September 30th, 2021. That's our current 36-month calendar. So beginning October 1st, 2018, the ABAWD slate was wiped clean and the 36-month count started over. All right, so counting free ABAWD months. You must review the previous months within the current 36-month ABAWD calendar to determine if the ABAWD individual has received countable free months of benefits. Count only full benefit months in which the ABAWD received benefits that were paid on or after October 1st, 2018. They were a mandatory individual and they were not meeting any of the ABAWD work requirements. All right, do not count prorated months or a month when a benefit was issued but no dollar amount was actually received. We do not apply the ABAWD limit to any person who is exempt from work registration for any reason. That's all those exemptions that we just covered in the work registration training. We also do not apply the ABAWD limit to a pregnant woman. Do we need to have verification from her physician that she's pregnant? We do not. We just need to have that conversation with her. Are you pregnant? Yes, no. When is your due date? And make sure we put that in the narrative so that we know when to follow up on that at the next application to see if there is a continued exemption through that pregnancy. All right. So in order to receive unlimited months of SNAP benefits, the ABAWD must work at least 20 hours per week or an average of 80 hours per month. So if they're working 10 hours one week and 30 the next week, as long as it's averaging out to that 80 hours a month. Also participating in and complying with the requirements of Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act or the Trade Adjustment Assistance for at least 20 hours per week, or a combination of both of the above. So if they're working 10 hours a week and they're participating in one of those programs 10 hours a week, and it equals out to be an average of 80 hours a month, then they're meeting that requirement. All right, we do define working, and this is in the Combined Manual Glossary, which I absolutely love. We do define working as work in exchange for money, work in exchange for goods or services, so in-kind income, or unpaid volunteer work with an agency or organization which is scheduled and structured. So it does have to be scheduled and structured, not just I show up and I help when I want to. If they're volunteering at the local food bank, we need to know what that schedule is and if they're meeting those hours, the 20 hours a week or 80 hours a month, volunteering there. All right, requirements to receive 3 consecutive extended ABAWD months. The ABAWD individual must have used his or her 3 free ABAWD months already, and they're still mandatory, and they have met the work requirements by working at least 80 hours in a 30-day period or participated and cooperated with the requirements of WIOA or TAA training for at least 80 hours. So they received their 3 free ABAWD months. Let's say they received those in January, February, March. Then they went to work. They worked at least 80 hours in a 30-day period. They lost that job. They're still mandatory. As long as we can verify that, then they would be eligible for those 3 consecutive extended ABAWD months. Any ABAWD individual is only eligible for 1 set of 3 consecutive extended months in that 36-month calendar. It's a one-time thing. Those months do have to be consecutive. They have to run boom, 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 one right after the other. So if something changes at month 2 of the consecutive extended months and they're now exempted, or they close their case for whatever reason, they move, whatever happens, that they do not receive that 3rd month, that doesn't get saved to be used later on. It's lost at that point. All right. For self-employed applicants, client statement can be used for their hours worked. Guess what? That means we have to narrate that conversation and how many hours they state they're working. They need to be asked. Narrate, 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 narrate. I can't stress that enough. Truly, when you have those conversations, make sure you're transferring that into your narrative clearly and the whole picture. All right, so how do we identify and track ABAWDs? Everything has to be tracked. EPICS needs to know how to treat these individuals. We have to be able to communicate that to EPICS. How do we do that? So the WORW screen in EPICS is one of the places that we do that records the work registration and ABAWD status for each individual in a SNAP assistance unit. So we just looked at the work registration side, pointer, at the work registration side. So we've got that indicator here, the work registration date that the 301 came back to us. Now let's look at the ABAWD side. So same thing, we've got the ABAWD heading over the columns. So our column, is this individual ABAWD, yes or no? We're gonna put a yes if they are ABAWD and N if they're not. Do they meet an exemption? Do they meet an ABAWD exemption, yes or no? Y if yes, N if not. And are we counting this month? So this month, right here, June 13, are we counting that month as accountable free ABAWD month, or it's not accountable month because they're meeting an exemption, or is it accountable extended month, one of the 3 consecutive extended ABAWD months? So if it is a free month, we're gonna put an F in that column right here. If it is not accountable month, we're gonna put an N. And if it is one of the 3 consecutive extended ABAWD months, we're gonna put an X in that column. So that's one of the places that we track this information. Let's look at some examples on that coding. So example 1, John is an ABAWD who is applying for SNAP benefits on February 9th. He does not currently meet an exemption and is not meeting work requirements. So coding for February, he applied February 9th. That makes February's benefit a partial month. So now we're gonna code it for the partial month. Is John ABAWD? Yes, he is. Is he exempt from ABAWD requirements? No, he isn't. Are we counting this month, February, as a free or extended month? No, we're not, because it's a partial month and we do not count partial months. Coding for then March, April, and May as we roll that case forward. Is John ABAWD? Yes, he is. Is he exempt from ABAWD requirements? No, he is not. And how are we counting those months? Those are his 3 free months. So we're going to put an F in that count column. Next one is Mary. Mary is an ABAWD. She's applying for SNAP benefits on February 12th. She is currently meeting work requirements by working at least 20 hours per week or an average of 80 hours a month. How do we code Mary? Now, she's applying on February 12th, so that first month is partial. It's not going to make a difference in the way we code her because she's meeting exemptions. So her coding for that entire certification period, February, March, April, and May, is going to be, is Mary ABAWD? Yep. She's an able-bodied adult. She doesn't have dependent children in the home. So yes, she's an ABAWD. Is she exempt from ABAWD provisions? Is she meeting an exemption? She is because she is working the 20 hours a week or 80 hours a month. Therefore, are we counting these as a free or extended month? No, we're not. So we're going to put that N code there. Example 3, Spencer is an ABAWD who is applying for SNAP benefits on February 7th. He has already used his 3 free ABAWD months and has since worked at least 80 hours in a 30-day period. We verify that. He's currently no longer meeting an exemption or the work requirements. Now we can look at those 3 extended months for Spencer, and Spencer is eligible for 3 extended months. So how do we code Spencer in WORW? So for February, he applied the 7th. That makes that first month a partial benefit month. His coding for February, is Spencer ABAWD? Yes. Is he meeting an exemption at this time? No, he's not. And are we counting February as a free or extended month? No, we're not, because it's a partial benefit month. So we're going to put an N there. Now his coding for March, April, and May, as we roll that case forward, is Spencer ABAWD? Yes, he is. Is he meeting an exemption? No, he is not. And how are we counting those months? Those are his extended months. So we're going to put an X into that count field. All right, so that's the WORW screen. That's one place that we do a little tracking for ABAWDs. And that's the coding, that's the language, that's our communication with EPICS to make sure that EPICS is treating that individual appropriately. Another place that we track ABAWD individuals is the ABAWD tracking screen, the ABTR screen. So to get there, I'm going to go back a couple screens just to kind of show we do have some new workers. So those of you who know this, bear with me. So the way we get to the ABTR screen is kind of like a secret little back door. You get there through the WORW screen. So you go to the work registration screen and you tab over, tab, all the way over past the ABAWD for this individual to this blank field right here. And your cursor will tab right over to that. And then you hit an X and enter. That's how you get to the ABTR or ABAWD tracking screen. So you do that for each individual in the assistance unit. So when you tab over here by Tom S., it's only going to pull up Tom S's ABTR screen. It doesn't pull up one for the whole assistance unit. So if you need to add information for Tom S., you do it there. Then you come back here if you need to add information for Tom B, and you tab over next to him. Same thing to that blank field, X and enter, and it'll pull up Tom B's individual ABTR screen. So that's how you get there. Now let's take a look at what you'll see when you're there. So we're going to pull up this. This is for Clyde Batboy. This is his ABTR screen. It's going to show us his ABAWD benefit months received, also any out-of-state ABAWD months, and his 36-month time frame. So we can see his name here, the 3-year count as of, and this is an old example, so 1099. As of October 1999, Clyde Batboy has already used 3 of his free months and 3 of his extended months. So he no longer has any months left in this 36-month period. So the plus signs in front of the months show us the 3-year period. It's very similar to the ABAWD section on the WORW screen. It just gives us a condensed look at the whole period instead of 1 month at a time. So we can see here that October 99 was Clyde Batboy ABAWD? Yes, he was. Was he exempt? Was he meeting an exemption? Yes, he was. And were we counting that month as a free or extended month? No, we were not. So it just gives us the whole picture for the whole 36-month period. We can see that he received his 3 free months in May of 97, July of 97, and March of 98. We can also see that he received his 3 extended months consecutively in September 98, October 98, and November 98. So it gives us that picture. Now, aside from that, this is also where you will go to input any out-of-state months. EPICS only knows what goes on in Wyoming, right? So EPICS using the WORW screen, we'll track an individual's ABAWD information, transfer that to the ABTR screen so we can get that whole picture, but only based on what EPICS knows, and EPICS only knows the ABAWD information for Wyoming. So if you have someone that moves here from out of state and you need to call and verify that their benefits have terminated, for example, in New Mexico, you're also going to ask, have they used any of their 3 free ABAWD months or 3 consecutive extended ABAWD months in your state? If they have, you want to know what months they used them and whether they were the free or extended months, right? Now we need to come to this ABTR screen and we need to input that information here so that we have a true picture for that individual, not just what they've done in Wyoming, but what they've used everywhere for that particular individual. So we put that into this screen. It's super easy. Like at first I was a little put off by it because I'm like, well, I don't know how to enter that kind of stuff into EPICS, but it's really easy. All you do is tab down here. So if we had information to add, we would put in the month and the year, and then just the coding. You just tab over. Were they ABAWD? Yes. Were they exempt? No. Was it a countable free or extended month? You're going to put that F or that X coding there. Now, because you manually put that information in, now EPICS knows that that means it was an out-of-state month, and it will populate an asterisk right in front of that date there for you. So that asterisk for the next worker looking at it is the indicator that that month was input and it was an out-of-state month. It was used somewhere else. As we know, ABAWD months do transfer from state to state. So if someone did use their 3 free months in New Mexico in our current 36-month calendar, they're no longer eligible for 3 more months here. They do transfer. So that's how you track it to make sure we know really what the full situation is no matter where they've lived. All right, so that's the ABTR screen. We also track ABAWD information in our RAVE system, which is super awesome. So you come to this little drop-down menu, you pick the ABAWD report. That's going to pull up your caseload ABAWD report. It's going to give you every ABAWD individual that you have in your case, in your caseload. So your caseload number's here. It's the case ID number is here, and then the client that is ABAWD there, and how many free months have they used, and how many extended months have they used. This information gets pulled from the ABTR screen and the WORW screen. That's why it's so important that we make sure we do have our coding correctly in there, because it's like cogs in a clock. One thing works and it makes the other thing work, and it all has to flow correctly. So we do need to make sure that those codes are correct and that that ABTR screen is updated, and it will pull that information here. So be sure to monitor your ABAWD report in the RAVE system on a consistent basis, ensuring that your ABAWD individuals do not receive more than their 3 free ABAWD and 3 extended ABAWD months. It's really easy for them to receive a little more because of our certification period requirements. We have to certify that 4 months, so sometimes they don't have 4 months available. They only have 3, or maybe they only have 2 because they've already used some. So we do need to keep an eye on this. I recommend making sure that this is in your Google Calendar at the beginning of every month, that you have time set aside to check this among other reports as part of your caseload management. And so you can see all of your individuals in that month, and you can see if you need to take any actions. Do you need to send the questionnaires that we're going to talk about in a minute? Or do we need to close that case down or close that individual down out of that case because there are others in there? So make sure that you do really have a great caseload management plan in place, that you put it in your Google Calendar. You know that's the time every month that you're going to be doing this so that you can follow up on that information. All right, so step-by-step ABAWD process. We know we have an ABAWD. All right, so the ABAWD individual must be sent an F-109 notice notifying the client of his or her ABAWD status. The WORW and ABTR screens, which we just looked at, must be updated to correctly track the client's ABAWD status. An alert must be set on the PAL screen to identify that a client must be sent an F-313 and F-314 notice at the start of the second ABAWD month. At the beginning of the second ABAWD month, you're going to send those F313 and 314 notices. If a client does not respond or return the F314 form by the 15th of the third ABAWD month, the case is to be closed or benefits reduced. If the client returns the F314 form, it needs to be reviewed to see if the client is eligible to continue receiving benefits after the third ABAWD month or if the benefits should end. And if a client is not entitled to benefits after the third ABAWD month, the appropriate notice needs to be sent. That would be the closure or the reduction of benefits. The reason it says reduction of benefits is if there are other individuals in the assistance unit, we're only going to reduce the benefits because the ABAWD is no longer eligible, but the remaining members are. So we're not going to close that case. We're going to update it and reduce benefits. Now, what's really cool and what works great sometimes is if your 4-month certification period matches perfectly with the individual's 3 free ABAWD months. The way that works and can work is if they come in after the first of the month, say they come in today and they apply for benefits for March. They've not used any of their 3 free ABAWD months. March is not going to count because it's a partial month, right? So their 3 free countable ABAWD months would be April, May, and June. So that gives us our 4-month certification period, March, April, May, June. So their certification period for SNAP benefits are ending exactly when their 3rd free ABAWD month is ending. In that situation, when you have it lined up perfectly like that, then we do not have to send that F313 and 314 notice at the beginning of the 2nd month. It means we have to touch that case a little less. When they come in to recertify in June for July's benefit, we can go through and find out if anything changed and if we need to go back and retroactively change any of their ABAWD information at that point. It just makes it a whole lot easier on you as the worker and on the client. So, but it does have to line up perfectly like that. It has to be kind of like the perfect storm. They haven't received any. The 1st month is partial, so the 4 months fits just perfectly with them. All right, the extended ABAWD month process. If the client is eligible for extended months, the F102 should be sent. Be sure to include a statement in the freeform area that the approval is for the 3 extended months and specify which months those include. To close an extended case, the F413 should be sent indicating that the 3 free months have been used and which months were included. Some things to keep in mind with ABAWDs. An ABAWD must be given a minimum of a 4-month certification period. An ABAWD must be sent the F313 and 314 notice at the beginning of their 2nd ABAWD month, unless you have that perfect situation. And depending on if and how a client responds to the F313 and 314 notice, benefits will either end at the end of the 3rd ABAWD month, be reduced, or maybe extended. It just depends on, are they now meeting an exemption? Are we closing the whole case because it was a household of 1? Or are we reducing benefits because there were other individuals in that assistance unit? All right, a few other ABAWD reminders. The case narrative is essential on an ABAWD case. The case narrative is essential in everything that you do. But in this, it can be determined who is an ABAWD and what actions have been taken. You want to list all assistance unit members who are ABAWD. Document if they're meeting an exemption and include why or why they're not. They are or are not. List all previously used free ABAWD months in the current 36-month period. You actually want to state, John has used 2 of his free ABAWD months in the months of December 2018 and January 2019. State also the projected free ABAWD months that will be used. If eligible, John's 3rd free ABAWD month will be April 2019. Reporting responsibilities. So under simplified reporting, the reporting requirements specific to an ABAWD are if an assistance unit contains an ABAWD who is working and his or her hours decrease to less than 20 hours per week on average, this must be reported by the 10th day of the following month. Clients are not required to report any other changes in their ABAWD status. So we have some examples of reporting responsibilities. So client applied for benefits on April 3rd and is not subject to ABAWD time limits due to a child under the age of 18 residing in the home. On May 17th, that child leaves the home, but it's not reported to you. In September, the client submits an application for recertification and this information becomes known. Now we can retroactively change ABAWD months. So because of that, we know that child left May 17th. That means that our adult clients' ABAWD months were June, July, and August. They're coming in September. So we're going to go back to June, July, and August. We're going to change their ABAWD count, and those are their 3 free ABAWD months. So they're no longer eligible for any more free ABAWD months. The client was not required to report that change to us, however, so we don't have an overpayment. So we're still going back to change them because they were ABAWD, they received those months, those were their 3 free ABAWD months. So we go back to WORW, we change that WORW coding to, yes, this individual is ABAWD, no, they're not meeting an exemption, and F, we're counting it as a free ABAWD month. However, we're not going to send that case in for an overpayment because with the simplified reporting requirements, that was not a reportable change. All right, reporting responsibilities example 2. Client applied for benefits on April 3rd and is not subject to ABAWD time limits due to working at least 20 hours per week or 80 hours per month. On May 17th, the ABAWD loses his or her employment, but this is not reported. In September, the client submits an application for recertification and this information becomes known. So we're going to go back and retroactively change June, July, and August to that client's free ABAWD months, just like the previous example. In this case, the client was required to report that change to us. We go over the reporting responsibilities. If you have an ABAWD, we let them know if your hours decrease to less than 20 hours a week or 80 hours a month, you need to let us know by the 10th day of the following month. So they didn't. That is a reportable change. Because of that, an overpayment for the month of September would exist. All right, some frequently asked questions. If we have a client who comes to Wyoming, do we need to check to see if they used ABAWD months in another state? Yes, we do. You'll need to contact that state that the client came from, verify if they've used free ABAWD months, extended ABAWD months, what months they were, and then you need to go onto that ABTR screen and you need to update it. Next question. If you have 2 separate assistance units that live in the same house, so they're purchasing and preparing separately, and one assistance unit contains only ABAWDs, the other has children in it, they're both under the same roof. Are both assistance units exempt from the ABAWD criteria? No, we look at it as an assistance unit. It's not the household who's living under the roof, it's who's in that assistance unit, who's on that application. So only the assistance unit with the children in it would be exempted from ABAWD. The other assistance unit is going to contain ABAWDs. They're going to meet ABAWD requirements. If a client reapplies after receiving their 3 free ABAWD months, do they need to be given an interview or can they just be denied? Can we just walk up front and say, hey, you used your 3 free ABAWD months, you're not eligible to apply anymore? No, we can't do that. They have to be interviewed. We're going to accept that application, schedule an appointment. We need to find out if they worked 80 hours in a 30-day period and are they now eligible for extended months, or if anything changed and we can retroactively change one of those ABAWD months. So we have to give them due process and the whole application and interview. All right. Next question. If there is a child in the assistance unit, are all adults exempt from ABAWD, even if they're not related? Say a family friend is just living with them temporarily, but is on that application with the family. All adults in that assistance unit are exempt if there is a child in the home or in the assistance unit. I'm going to watch that language. All right. If an ABAWD comes in after they receive their 3 free months and claims they are unable to work, can we expedite them? So the client would need to verify that he or she is exempt. The worker needs to make every effort to verify this information within our expedited time frame, so within that 7-day expedited time frame. If you are unable to do this, you're going to go ahead and expedite that case based on client statement. And part of the verification that you will postpone is for their current incapacity. All right. Next question. An ABAWD is exempt if they work 80 hours or more per month. What do we define as working? We talked about this at the very beginning of this PowerPoint. Working is defined in our combined manual glossary as work in exchange for money, work in exchange for goods or services, that's the in-kind income, or unpaid volunteer work with an agency or organization which is scheduled and structured. All right. If an ABAWD becomes exempt in the middle of a month, can we change their ABAWD status as of the beginning of that month? Nope. ABAWD status is as of the first day of the month, and that status stands for that whole month. All right, next one. What do you do if a client turns in the F314 after his or her case is closed and it indicates that the client is now meeting one of the exemptions? Well, if the client turned the form in after the benefits have ended, then that client needs to reapply. If the client turns the form in before the benefits have ended, then you're going to act on that form and treat the case accordingly. All right. Does the client still get to receive all 3 of their extended months of benefits if they go over income during the first month? We talked about this as well. If a client reports that his or her income has increased, you need to act on this. If that client's no longer eligible, then the case is to be closed, and the client will not get all 3 of the extended months. They have to be received consecutive. We can't save one for later. Please note that 10 days must be given for adverse action and that extended months must all run consecutively. Next one, if you have a case where you can either close the case for using all 3 ABAWD months or it can auto close for end of a certification period, what do? Hey, make it easy on yourself. Let that case auto close. Not only does that make it easier on you, but it also does not put that case into the QC pool for negative cases. So if you can line their ABAWD months up perfectly with that 4-month certification period, do it. And it will, you don't have to send the F313 and 314 notices at the beginning of the 2nd month. You do not have to go in and manually close that case. You let it just close with that certification period. And it makes everything so much easier on yourself and the client. All right. If a client has a dependent child that lives with them part of the time but is included in another SNAP case, are they exempt from the ABAWD provision? So is that adult exempt from the ABAWD provision? No. The child must be included in that SNAP assistance unit in order for the adults to be exempted from ABAWD. All right, next one. If you have a 19-year-old in high school, and is he or she an ABAWD? Yes. That 19-year-old is an able-bodied adult without dependents. However, they are also exempt because they are in school. So if you reference manual section 707, 706, and 702, it will exempt them. It exempts them from work registration. It exempts them from ABAWD. All right. If a client has applied for SSI, is he or she an ABAWD? No, a client who provides proof that he or she has applied for SSI is not an ABAWD. That goes back to those exemptions from work registration as well. And also, they're not able-bodied if they're applying for SSI. If a client is denied SSI and it's in the appeal stage, then he or she is not exempted. So just like the work registration stuff, it only applies to the SSI application, Supplemental Security Income Application, does not apply to any of the SSDI, DS programs. And it has to be in the initial application process. It cannot have been already denied and now in the appeals process. So it's going to require a little bit of homework. All right. Does it need to be narrated that you have asked a client who has exhausted his or her 3 ABAWD months if they have worked 80 hours in a 30-day period to see if he or she may qualify for extended benefits? Yes. It is absolutely required of you to see if they're eligible for extended months. We have to indicate that in the narrative. QC will ask this question if it's not in the narrative. So an ESY-4 should always be checked at new application or recertification as well. All right. Let's stop sharing that. There we go. Okay, so that is everything that's on the agenda for you today. Like I said, I did see a lot of really great questions coming in on Instant Messenger, so I'm going to get that Q&A document put together for you, and I will have that emailed out to you hopefully this afternoon. If you have any other questions, please let me know. If you have any questions for Kathy Ernst regarding the Medicaid programs and the Medicare savings programs, let me know as well. I will work with her to get those answered for you. With that, we'll go ahead and let you go. Get on with your day, and thanks for joining us.